Now, also in Columbus, a young woman was shot and killed last night. This one happened near East Livingston Avenue and Beechwood Road on Dort Place. Crime Tracker 10's Lacey Chris spoke exclusively with the up-and-coming rapper's mom.
She had a big personality and a big future ahead of her. That's how Courtney Bruce, better known as Boog The Bandit's mom, described the up-and-coming rapper.
Every time we touch down, we riding through the city with the top down. DM and DM again. Everybody want to know how I started modeling. Long story short, I went up to New York, met some of the best people I have ever encountered in my whole entire life, and they just changed my perspective on a lot of shit. It wasn't something that was supposed to happen. I just seen a bigger and better picture than from where I'm from, Columbus, Ohio, where don't nobody make it out. Everybody grow up and get stuck in. That's where I'm from. I went up there, I seen life. I'm like, I gotta make something shake. It ain't even about being fresh and best dressed and looking sweet all the time. No, I model because I want people to look at me and be like, damn, she wanted me to feel this way, and I felt this way. I'm trying to be trans.
She was going to be the one to put Columbus on the map, said one local producer who had worked with her. There was no question about it. Boog was next up.
Risky, I love you and thank you. Shout out to my team, Music the Label. Shout out to all my producers, my engineers, everybody that's been putting in work. We had 500,000 views on YouTube. 3 videos in, all 3 videos got 100K and up, and I'm finna drop again.
The confident voice flowing through the speakers belonged to Courtney Nicole Bruce, known to fans as Boog The Bandit, a 26-year-old rapper whose raw talent and authentic style were rapidly earning her recognition beyond the streets of Columbus, Ohio. Her distinctive delivery and honest lyrics were opening doors, building a loyal fan base, and positioning her for a breakthrough in the music industry. But on May 20th, 2021, Courtney's rising career and promising future were violently cut short. Columbus, Ohio might not be the first city that comes to mind when thinking about hip-hop hotspots, but its music scene has produced notable artists and maintains a vibrant underground community. The city's rich cultural landscape contrasts sharply with its troubling violence statistics. By the time of Courtney's death, Columbus had already recorded 75 homicides in 2021, a number that would continue to climb throughout the year, marking one of the deadliest periods in the city's history. It was against this backdrop that Courtney built her reputation as Boog The Bandit. Friends describe her as a firecracker, energetic, determined, and impossible to ignore. Her tracks Haraway, Risky, and Lonely showcased her versatility and authentic voice, earning thousands of streams and catching the attention of music industry insiders. Local DJs championed her sound and fellow artists respected her work ethic and creativity. What makes Courtney's story particularly heartbreaking isn't just the loss of her talent and potential. It's how her life ended through a planned ambush disguised as a casual meetup. Someone she knew had set her up, luring her to a location where others waited with guns drawn. The target, the gold chain around her neck, and the wallet in her pocket. The cruel irony wasn't lost on those who knew her. Courtney had always been, in her own words, about her business. She worked hard, stayed focused on her goals, and was building something real. Yet in the end, it was the symbols of her growing success that made her a target. As police would later discover, the attack wasn't random. It wasn't a chance encounter or wrong place, wrong time tragedy. It was a betrayal by someone within her circle. Someone who knew her movements, her possessions, and exactly how to get her to lower her guard. The question that haunted investigators, family members, and fans alike was simple but devastating. Who would orchestrate the killing of a young woman with so much promise over material possessions? And what does this say about the dangers facing young artists as they begin to achieve recognition? Here at Crime Scene Exposed, we dive deep into the most infamous crimes and the stories behind them. If you're interested in understanding how promising talents like Boog The Bandit become targets of violence, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more detailed investigations and analysis. Today, we'll examine not just who took Courtney's life, but the circumstances that led to this tragedy and what it reveals about the vulnerabilities of rising artists. As news of Courtney's death spread through Columbus and across social media, the hip-hop community mourned the loss of a unique voice silenced far too soon. Her mother, Wanda, vowed that her daughter would not become just another statistic. But to understand why Courtney was targeted and how her killers were eventually brought to justice, we need to look more closely at her life, her career, and the events of that fatal day in May 2021. Courtney Nicole Bruce was born on September 7, 1994, in Columbus, Ohio. From an early age, those around her recognized something special in her personality, a natural charisma and determination that would later fuel her artistic pursuits. Growing up in Columbus shaped her perspective and eventually her music, giving her an authentic voice that couldn't be manufactured. Courtney was a firecracker from day one, her mother Wanda often told friends. She had this energy about her that just pulled people in. This magnetic quality wasn't just charm, it was a genuine interest in others combined with an unwavering confidence in herself. Even as a child, Courtney stood out, whether in school performances or family gatherings. She wasn't just loud or attention-seeking, she had presence.
Courtney was a hot tomato, spicy, hot, determined, true to her nature. She knew who she was. For her to get pistol whipped and shot in the chest and multiple times, I heard, that wasn't called for. Even though she put up a fight.
Wanda says she never thought her daughter would be taken like this.
No.
But she did worry about her safety.
I always been nervous because I'm a mom. I always worry about her safety, her being small, petite.
She says her daughter's rapping career was taking off and that Courtney was planning on moving to Atlanta but stayed to take care of Wanda. The grieving mother tells me her daughter would have been safer in Atlanta.
When you're trying to climb out of the pit, it was somebody trying to pull you down.
She says she doesn't want Courtney to be remembered as another homicide statistic.
She was loved. Even through her tribulation and trials and stuff, she tried to make the best of things. She made mistakes. We all do.
Family formed the foundation of Courtney's life. Her relationship with her mother Wanda was particularly special, a bond built on mutual respect and unwavering support. Wanda recognized her daughter's talents early and encouraged her creative expression, even when Courtney's path diverged from conventional career choices. Similarly, her brother Caleb served as both protector and cheerleader, often the first to hear her new lyrics or ideas. Mom and Caleb were her rocks, recalled a childhood friend. They believed in her when she was just starting out, recording on borrowed equipment and performing at any venue that would have her. 2020 was actually when things really started popping off for her, explained a local music promoter. While everyone else was putting their careers on pause, Boog was in the studio, creating content, staying visible. By the time things started opening back up in 2021, she had built serious momentum. By spring 2021, industry attention had begun to extend well beyond Columbus. A music executive from Atlanta had reached out about potential distribution deals. Several established artists from larger markets had expressed interest in collaborations. Music blogs in New York and Los Angeles had featured her in artists to watch lists. The geographic limitations that often constrain regional artists were beginning to fall away. Yet this growing recognition brought challenges that Courtney was just beginning to navigate. As her profile rose, so did the complexities of her position. The symbols of success, from expensive recording equipment to the gold chain she often wore in videos, made her increasingly visible in a city struggling with economic inequality and rising crime rates. Friends had begun suggesting increased security measures at performances. Some recommended she consider relocating to a larger market like Atlanta, where industry infrastructure could better support her rising status. Others warned about the jealousy that often accompanies local success, the complex dynamics when someone from a neighborhood begins to make it. Courtney approached these challenges with characteristic confidence, believing her community connections would protect her while she pursued opportunities beyond Columbus. She remained accessible, continued moving through familiar neighborhoods, and maintained the same friendships she'd had before fame knocked on her door. It was this combination of rising profile and continued accessibility that would ultimately create the vulnerability exploited by those who plotted against her on May 20th, 2021. The spring of 2021 marked a period of intense activity for Courtney. She was finalizing new music, booking summer performances as venues reopened, and fielding increasingly serious industry inquiries. May was particularly busy. She had released new content online, performed at 2 local events, and was preparing for what many believed would be a breakthrough summer. What Courtney couldn't know was that her movements were being closely watched. Her social media posts showcasing new jewelry, her regular routines, and her willingness to meet with fans and connections had made her both visible and predictable. These factors created an opportunity that 22-year-old Kyson Murphy had begun to exploit. Murphy was known to Courtney, not as a close friend, but as someone adjacent to her music circles. He had attended her performances, occasionally exchanged messages about the local music scene, and positioned himself as a supporter of her career. This peripheral connection gave him just enough credibility to avoid suspicion. On May 20th, 2021, Murphy reached out to Courtney with what seemed like a routine request. According to investigators who later reviewed their messages, he suggested meeting to discuss a potential collaboration or business opportunity. The exact pretext remains part of the case evidence, but what's clear is that Murphy presented a reason compelling enough for Courtney to agree to meet that evening. The location Murphy suggested, the 3700 block of Dort Place, wasn't unusual enough to raise red flags. It was in a residential area of Columbus that Courtney knew, not far from places she frequently visited. She had no reason to suspect that the meeting was anything other than the music business connection Murphy had described. Text messages recovered from Courtney's phone show she arrived at the location around 8:30 p.m., accompanied by a male friend. This detail would later prove significant. Investigators believe Murphy had expected her to come alone and had to adjust the plan when she arrived with company. What happened next has been reconstructed through witness statements, physical evidence, and the subsequent confessions of those involved. As Courtney and her companion approached the meeting spot, they were suddenly confronted by multiple armed young men who emerged from between buildings. In addition to Murphy, 19-year-old Jamada Williams and 17-year-old Sincere McIntyre had positioned themselves strategically around the area. The ambush was immediate and violent. The group demanded Courtney's gold chain, wallet, and other valuables. According to witnesses who heard the confrontation, there was shouting followed quickly by gunfire, suggesting that the situation escalated from robbery to shooting in a matter of moments. During the chaos, multiple shots were fired. Courtney was struck by at least one bullet in a vital area. Her male companion was also assaulted but managed to escape without life-threatening injuries. The attackers fled the scene with Courtney's chain and wallet, items worth far less than the life they had just devastated. What happened next speaks to Courtney's remarkable strength and determination. Despite suffering a critical gunshot wound, she managed to get herself to her vehicle. In what would be her final act of self-preservation, she drove herself to Mount Carmel East Hospital, a decision that gave her a chance at survival that her attackers had tried to deny her. Hospital staff immediately alerted police when Courtney arrived with a gunshot wound, as is standard procedure. Medical personnel worked urgently to save her, but the injury was too severe. Courtney Nicole Bruce, Boog The Bandit, was pronounced dead shortly after arrival, just 26 years old. The hospital's notification to police triggered the beginning of the homicide investigation. As detectives arrived at Mount Carmel East, they found Courtney's vehicle in the parking lot with evidence inside that would later prove crucial in identifying her attackers. Meanwhile, at the scene of the shooting, officers discovered shell casings and additional evidence that would help reconstruct the ambush. News of Courtney's death spread rapidly through Columbus, first through frantic calls and texts among friends, then via social media, and finally through official news reports. The city's hip-hop community, already reeling from other recent losses to violence, was devastated. Fans expressed shock and grief online, sharing her music and memories of performances. Her family, particularly her mother Wanda and brother Caleb, faced the unimaginable task of processing her sudden, violent death. The robbery-turned-murder of Courtney Bruce became Columbus's 75th homicide of 2021, a statistic that fails entirely to capture the magnitude of potential extinguished or the ripple effects her death would have throughout her community. The planning behind this ambush reveals how deliberate this attack was. What do you think drives young people to target rising artists in their own communities? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you're finding this case as disturbing as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to Crime Scene Exposed for more in-depth investigations into cases that demand our attention. When Columbus police detectives arrived at Mount Carmel East Hospital on the evening of May 20th, 2021, they faced a situation that had become distressingly familiar. Courtney Bruce was the 75th homicide victim in the city that year, a number that reflected a troubling surge in violent crime. Columbus was on pace to shatter previous homicide records, with each case stretching police resources thinner. Despite these challenges, investigators recognized the urgency of Courtney's case. The first 48 hours after a homicide are critical, and detectives immediately began collecting evidence and statements while memories were fresh and physical evidence remained undisturbed. "We had 2 crime scenes to process simultaneously," explained the lead detective assigned to the case. The hospital where the victim arrived and the location of the actual shooting on Dort Place. Each contained vital pieces of the puzzle. At Mount Carmel East, investigators documented Courtney's injuries and collected her personal effects. Her vehicle, parked haphazardly near the emergency entrance, contained blood evidence, her phone, and other items that would prove valuable to the investigation. The phone, in particular, would become a crucial element in tracking her final communications. Meanwhile, at the Dort Place location, crime scene technicians worked through the night collecting shell casings, documenting blood patterns, and searching for surveillance cameras that might have captured portions of the incident. They found evidence of a violent struggle and multiple shell casings that indicated at least 2 different firearms had been used. Witness canvassing began immediately, with officers going door to door in the residential area. Several residents reported hearing gunshots and commotion around 8:30 p.m., and a few had glimpsed young men running from the scene. While these accounts varied in detail, they helped establish a timeline and confirmed the presence of multiple suspects. The breakthrough in the case came from Courtney's phone. Digital forensics specialists extracted her recent communications and discovered the messages from Kyson Murphy arranging the meeting at Dort Place. The timing and content of these messages immediately raised suspicions about Murphy's involvement. The texts showed a clear pattern of deception, noted the digital evidence specialist. He created a pretext to get her to that specific location at that specific time. When we see that kind of setup followed by violent crime, it's rarely coincidental. Background checks revealed that Murphy had a minor criminal record, but no previous violent offenses. More telling was his social media activity, which showed connections to both Jamada Williams and Sincere McIntyre. Photos recovered from their accounts showed the 3 together on multiple occasions, establishing their association prior to the crime. Detectives brought Murphy in for questioning within 72 hours of the murder. Initially, he maintained that he had merely arranged to meet Courtney for legitimate business reasons and had no knowledge of any planned robbery. However, his story contained inconsistencies that investigators quickly identified. Cell phone records placed Murphy in the vicinity of Dort Place at the time of the shooting, contradicting his initial claim that he had canceled the meeting and never went to the location. Additionally, text messages between Murphy and Williams in the hours before the crime contained veiled references to their plans, with one message reading simply, "We on for tonight?" When confronted with these discrepancies, Murphy's story began to change. He admitted to being present but claimed he had no knowledge that violence would occur. As pressure mounted, he eventually acknowledged his role in setting up the meeting, but attempted to shift the blame for the shooting to his accomplices. This partial confession gave investigators enough to obtain search warrants for the residences of all 3 suspects. The searches yielded critical evidence. At Williams' home, police discovered a gold chain matching the description of the one taken from Courtney. In McIntyre's bedroom, they found a wallet containing Courtney's driver's license, hidden between his mattress and box spring. Most damning was the recovery of 2 handguns, one from a vehicle registered to Williams' mother and another from a storage unit rented by Murphy's girlfriend. Ballistics testing would later confirm that these weapons matched the shell casings found at the crime scene. As investigators built their case, they also developed a clearer understanding of the motive. This wasn't a random crime of opportunity, but a targeted robbery based on the suspect's knowledge of Courtney's rising profile and the jewelry she often displayed in videos and social media posts. They saw her success and decided to take what she had earned, explained the prosecutor later assigned to the case. It's a particularly heartbreaking form of predation, young people targeting another young person from their community who's finding legitimate success. Interviews with associates of the suspects revealed that they had discussed Courtney's jewelry and money in the weeks leading up to the crime. One witness reported overhearing Williams' comment on how much that chain must be worth after seeing one of Courtney's recent videos. Another recalled Murphy mentioning that he knew when and where to find her because of her social media posts about performances and studio sessions. By early June 2021, investigators had assembled enough evidence to present their case to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. The evidence painted a clear picture. Murphy had used his peripheral connection to Courtney to lure her to a location where Williams and McIntyre were waiting to rob her. When the robbery escalated to violence, Courtney was shot, and the 3 fled with her possessions. The prosecutor's office moved quickly, recognizing both the strength of the evidence and the community impact of the case. On June 10, 2021, arrest warrants were issued for all 3 suspects on charges of murder and aggravated robbery. The investigation had moved from hospital alert to arrest warrants in just 3 weeks, a testament to both the priority placed on the case and the clear evidence trail left by the suspects. For Courtney's family and fans, the swift progress offered a measure of comfort amid overwhelming grief. Justice was in motion, though nothing could bring back the vibrant artist whose voice had been silenced. The arrests of the 3 suspects occurred in rapid succession over a 48-hour period in mid-June 2021. Tactical teams from the Columbus Police Department executed the warrants with careful planning, aware that the suspects might be armed and dangerous. Kyson Murphy, 22, was the first to be taken into custody. Officers arrested him without incident at his girlfriend's apartment on June 12. Body camera footage later released to media showed Murphy appearing stunned as officers handcuffed him, repeatedly asking, "What is this about?" despite the murder warrant being clearly stated by arresting officers. Jamada Williams, 19, was apprehended the following morning at a relative's home on the east side of Columbus. Unlike Murphy, Williams attempted to flee when officers arrived, running out a back door before being quickly detained by perimeter units positioned around the property. The final arrest came on June 14th, when 17-year-old Sincere McIntyre was located at a motel on the outskirts of Columbus. Despite his age, the severity of the charges meant he would be prosecuted as an adult under Ohio law. All 3 suspects were transported to Franklin County Jail and held without bail pending arraignment. At their initial court appearances, the gravity of the charges became clear. Each defendant faced counts of aggravated murder, aggravated robbery, and conspiracy. Murphy faced additional charges of complicity to commit murder for his role in orchestrating the ambush. The prosecution made it clear from the outset that they viewed this as a capital case deserving of the most serious consequences available under Ohio law. These individuals plotted to rob Ms. Bruce, lured her to a location where she would be vulnerable, and then took her life over material possessions, stated the lead prosecutor at the arraignment. The premeditated nature of this crime and the callous disregard for human life warrant the fullest prosecution under the law. All 3 defendants entered not guilty pleas, though their legal strategies quickly diverged. Murphy's attorney signaled an intent to cooperate with prosecutors, suggesting his client had never intended for violence to occur. Williams maintained complete innocence, claiming he was elsewhere at the time of the shooting despite the evidence found in his possession. McIntyre's defense centered on his age and alleged manipulation by the older defendants. The prosecution's case, as presented during preliminary hearings, was methodically constructed around 3 key elements: digital evidence linking Murphy to the setup, physical evidence connecting all 3 to the scene and the stolen items, and ballistics matching the recovered weapons to the crime scene. Text messages between Murphy and Courtney established the deception used to bring her to Dort Place. Communications among the 3 suspects before and after the crime demonstrated planning and consciousness of guilt. Cell tower data placed all 3 at the location during the critical time frame. Perhaps most compelling was the testimony of Courtney's friend who had accompanied her that night and witnessed the ambush. Though injured in the attack, he provided a detailed account of how the 3 defendants surrounded them, demanded Courtney's possessions, and opened fire when the situation escalated. They didn't even give her a chance to hand everything over, he testified during a preliminary hearing. They started grabbing at her chain, and then the guns came out. It happened so fast. As the case progressed through the legal system throughout late 2021 and into 2022, plea negotiations began. Facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of life sentences, the defendants' unified front began to crack. In October 2021, Murphy became the first to accept a plea deal, agreeing to testify against his co-defendants in exchange for the prosecution not seeking the maximum penalty. His testimony provided additional details about the planning of the crime, including how they had specifically targeted Courtney because of her rising profile and visible success. He admitted to monitoring her social media to identify what valuables she possessed and when she might be vulnerable. By early 2022, Williams also accepted a plea agreement, though with less favorable terms than Murphy due to evidence suggesting he had fired the fatal shot. McIntyre, the youngest defendant, held out the longest before finally accepting a plea deal in March 2022. The sentencing hearings were emotional affairs, with Courtney's mother, Wanda, delivering powerful victim impact statements. She spoke not only of her personal loss, but of the broader impact of Courtney's death on her community and the music world. "You didn't just take my daughter," she told the defendants. "You took a voice that was inspiring others, a talent that was just beginning to shine, and a future that would have lifted up everyone around her." Murphy received a 25-year sentence with possibility of parole after 20 years. Williams, identified as the shooter, was sentenced to life with possibility of parole after 30 years. McIntyre, given consideration for his age and lesser role, received 20 years with eligibility for parole after 15. For Courtney's family, the sentences brought a measure of legal closure, though the pain of her absence remains immeasurable. As her mother told reporters outside the courthouse after the final sentencing, "This isn't justice. Justice would be having my daughter back. But it's accountability, and that's what we fought for." The news of Courtney's death sent immediate ripples through Columbus. Within hours of the announcement, fans and friends gathered spontaneously outside her mother's home, bringing candles, flowers, and printed photos of the artist. By the following evening, a formal vigil had been organized at a local park where Courtney had performed just months earlier. More than 300 people attended that first memorial, forming a circle of light as darkness fell. Fellow artists performed her songs, friends shared stories, and her mother Wanda, despite overwhelming grief, addressed the crowd with remarkable strength. "My daughter was not just a statistic," Wanda declared, her voice steady despite her tears. "She was Courtney Nicole Bruce. She was Boog the Bandit. She was a creator, a visionary, and she deserves to be remembered for her gifts, not just for how she was taken from us." This statement became the foundation of Wanda's subsequent advocacy. In the months following Courtney's death, she emerged as a powerful voice against gun violence in Columbus. She spoke at community meetings, collaborated with existing anti-violence organizations, and met with city officials to discuss prevention strategies. "If I can save one mother from feeling this pain, then Courtney's legacy grows," Wanda explained during a community forum in August 2021. "If I can convince one young person to put down a gun, then her music continues in a different way." Online, tributes to Courtney took on a life of their own. Fans created memorial playlists, shared previously unreleased snippets of her music, and promised to keep her name in conversations about Columbus hip-hop. Her streaming numbers surged as new listeners discovered her work, drawn by the tragic circumstances, but staying for the undeniable talent. "I play her music every day," wrote one fan in a widely shared social media post. Not because of how she died, but because of how she lived, with authenticity, with fire, with something real to say. The impact on Columbus's hip-hop community was profound and multifaceted. Artists who had known Courtney organized tribute concerts, with proceeds going to her family and to youth music programs. Several established performers from the city incorporated references to her in their work, ensuring her name remained present in the culture she had helped build. More sobering were the conversations her death prompted about security and safety for local artists. Many performers began hiring protection for shows, limiting information about their whereabouts on social media, and reconsidering how they displayed symbols of success. "Boog's death changed how we move in this city," explained a Columbus producer who had worked with her. "It forced everyone to recognize that visibility can create vulnerability. That's a painful lesson learned at too high a cost." Despite these necessary adaptations, the community remained determined that fear would not overshadow Courtney's artistic legacy. In December 2021, on what would have been her 27th birthday, a collective of Columbus artists released For Boog, a compilation album featuring both tributes to Courtney and previously unreleased collaborations she had recorded. The project's introduction included a simple but powerful statement: her voice will not be silenced. Her story will not be defined by its ending. Perhaps the most meaningful tributes came from young women inspired by Courtney's example. Several female artists cited her as the reason they began making music, appreciating how she had navigated a male-dominated industry with confidence and authenticity. "She showed us it was possible," said an 18-year-old rapper at a memorial event marking the one-year anniversary of Courtney's death. "She kicked down doors without changing who she was. That blueprint remains, even if she's gone. When I write, when I record, when I perform, I'm carrying something she gave all of us." This sentiment, that Courtney's influence transcends her physical absence, remains the most powerful aspect of her legacy. As her brother Caleb told mourners, "They took her life, but they can't take her impact. Her music is forever. Her spirit is forever. Boog the Bandit is forever." Courtney Bruce's murder illuminates a troubling reality faced by emerging artists across America: the dangerous intersection of growing visibility and persistent vulnerability. As local performers gain recognition, they often become targets before they have access to the security resources available to established stars. This precarious position, being known enough to be identified as successful but not yet wealthy enough to be fully protected, creates a window of risk that has claimed too many promising talents. There's this middle ground where artists are getting noticed but don't have a security team or management handling their safety, explains Dr. James Wilson, who studies violence in entertainment industries. They're still accessible in their communities, still moving through the same spaces they always have, but now with a higher profile and perceived wealth. This visibility makes artists like Courtney particularly vulnerable to what criminologists call status crimes, offenses motivated by a desire to acquire status symbols or to diminish someone else's rising status. The gold chain that made Courtney a target wasn't just valuable for its material worth, it represented achievement and success that others coveted or resented. Economic factors significantly influence these dynamics. In cities like Columbus, where economic opportunities can be limited in certain neighborhoods, visible success can create dangerous friction. When legitimate paths to advancement seem blocked, some individuals turn to predatory behavior, targeting those who appear to be making it out through talent or hard work. It's a tragic irony, notes community activist Teresa Johnson, who works with at-risk youth in Columbus. The very symbols that artists use to show they're succeeding, the things that inspire others to believe success is possible, can make them targets for those who feel left behind. This economic context doesn't excuse violent crime, but helps explain patterns that communities must address to prevent similar tragedies. Comprehensive approaches to reducing violence must include both immediate safety measures and long-term economic development that creates more legitimate opportunities for young people. For artists specifically, security considerations become increasingly important as their profiles rise. Industry veterans recommend several practical steps. First, controlling information about movements and appearances. Social media posts about locations should be made after leaving, not before or during attendance. Performance details should be shared through official channels rather than personal accounts. Second, investing in basic security as soon as financially possible. This doesn't necessarily mean bodyguards, but could include trusted friends serving as informal security at events, transportation planning that minimizes vulnerability, and venue assessments before appearances. Third, securing valuable items. While artists often feel pressure to display symbols of success, these can be reserved for official appearances and secured properly at other times. Some performers use high-quality replicas for day-to-day, while keeping authentic pieces secured. Fourth, building relationships with local law enforcement. Many police departments have community liaison officers who can provide security assessments or increased patrols around events when notified in advance. These measures aren't about living in fear, explains a security consultant who works with emerging artists. They're about recognizing that visibility creates responsibility for self-protection until infrastructure catches up with profile. Beyond individual safety measures, preventing violence requires community-wide commitment. Cities like Columbus have developed promising initiatives that deserve support and expansion. Violence intervention programs that identify and mediate conflicts before they escalate to violence have shown success in multiple cities. These programs often employ respected community members who can intervene when tensions rise. Youth arts programs provide constructive alternatives and legitimate paths to recognition. When young people have access to recording studios, performance spaces, and mentorship, they're less likely to resent others' success and more likely to pursue their own talents. Economic development initiatives that create jobs and entrepreneurship opportunities address root causes of property crimes and violence. When communities have multiple paths to advancement, the pressure on entertainment success as the only way out diminishes. Mental health resources that help young people process trauma, manage anger, and develop conflict resolution skills create safer communities for everyone, including rising artists. Fans play a crucial role in this ecosystem. By supporting artists through legitimate channels, purchasing music, attending official events, engaging positively on social media, fans help create the financial foundation for better security. Additionally, fans can advocate for violence prevention programs in their communities and support organizations working to create safer environments for creative expression. Courtney's legacy includes not just her music, but the conversations her death has sparked about artist safety and community responsibility. Her mother, Wanda, perhaps expressed it most powerfully. We need to create communities where talent is protected, not punished. Where success is celebrated, not targeted. Where young people with gifts can shine without fear. The path forward requires both practical security measures for individual artists and broader community transformation. It demands recognition that creative expression is valuable not just culturally, but economically, worth protecting as both human potential and community asset. As we remember Courtney Nicole Bruce, her talent, her determination, her impact, we must also commit to creating environments where the next generation of artists can flourish without fear, where success doesn't make them targets, and where communities rally to protect rather than prey upon their brightest stars. Courtney's story reminds us how talent can be extinguished in an instant through senseless violence. If this story impacted you, please like, share, and subscribe to help spread awareness about these important issues. What state or country are you watching from, and have you seen similar cases of rising artists being targeted in your area? Your experiences and insights could help others understand and address these challenges in communities everywhere.